Joining me now, the number one Democratic political consultant in Virginia, and probably in the top 5 in the country, and he's with us now, Ben Tribbett. Hey, Ben, good to have you, man.
Hey, good morning, John.
I put you in the top 5, but you're probably in the top 3. But I don't want to make your I don't want to make your head too big, but you really are the best. And here's an example of how great Ben is. And I know I sing your tunes all the time because you get a lot of things right. Although we did go down with the Rams in the Super Bowl, went down in flames on that one. So here's what Ben tweets out yesterday. This during the special election thing, and I got to just get this here, Ben. I didn't pull it up, so let me just get it. But here's what he tweets out. I want to read you his tweet. Here it is. This is at not Larry Sabato. You can follow him there. He said, "Here's a stat to make everyone scream. If tonight's percentage change from 2015 held up in each district this November," that's the special election last night, "the Democrats would lose 13 House seats under the old lines and 11 House seats under the new lines, but would pick up 1 in the Senate, taking control." Ben Tribbett. So, Ben, on the minutes after the results come in, the Democratic House Caucus sends out another press release calling on Justice Fairfax to resign. And, you know, an average layman looks at it and they say, okay, results not favorable, call on Fairfax to go to save your butt in November, but why did you call on him to go a week ago? So it just break all this down for us, Ben.
Sure. Well, I actually am not positive that's right, John. I think that press release on Fairfax came out in the afternoon, and it generated a lot of outrage. I mean, I just let's start with that. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm just appalled at the party leadership on this issue. They have absolutely minimized the seriousness of what are not just rape allegations, but violent rape allegations from 2 very credible women. And John, it's really hard for me as a Democrat to see this and be able to justify to people, you know, why would they be Democrats? I mean, I understand why you know people would vote Democratic and support Democratic candidates because they're against other candidates that they agree with more often. But in terms of being a Democrat, wow, I mean, it just is like you look at this and you're like, the party leadership is protecting him and not supporting the victims of what is, you know, some accused very violent crimes. I mean, and I can't tell you how disappointing that is. I mean, it's certainly, you know, that position doesn't represent me. It doesn't represent a lot of people out there. And you know, so that having been said, you know, there are a couple of delegates that have spoken out already, breaking with the Democratic caucus position on this. And I saw Delegate Hope spoke out on it yesterday afternoon in the Richmond Times-Dispatch. I hope others will speak out. You know, the Republicans are offering what is a very reasonable offer of a bipartisan investigation in the House. That is the only mechanism to which this can be investigated. The women who are involved have said they prefer not to go to the DAs for investigation in the places where the crimes occurred. That was how they started this, only as a last resort. Look, I think that making an incredibly generous offer to the lieutenant governor to try to play this out in a political realm. The worst thing that can happen to the lieutenant governor in political hearings is that he loses his office. If the House Democratic Caucus forces these women into criminal proceedings, they could be destroying Justin Fairfax's entire life, his family. He's going, if they put it into criminal proceedings, he could spend a substantial amount of time in prison. These are violent allegations. So the idea that they would push it to that to try to protect him politically is just, it's repulsive on all levels. This is, it's horrible. So, very disappointing. And, I can't associate myself with what's going on right now in any way.
Ben, you said you were appalled by Democratic Party leadership. A lot of our listeners don't know what that means. Like, define Virginia Democratic Party leadership. Like, who is that?
Well, I think that, when we talk about, in this context, it's the House Democratic Caucus. It's what, the leadership of the House Caucus is the one that's leading the charge on this. So whether that be Eileen Filler-Corn, Rip Sullivan, Alfonso Lopez, David Toscano still takes on a very large leadership role, Charnel Herring, all of them that would have been involved in crafting a statement like what went out last night, I'm absolutely appalled.
So what exception did you take with the statement last night? Because they did call on him to resign. What exception did you have with their statement, other than I thought the timing was suspect?
Yeah, I have the same exception that the attorneys for these women had, which is that is not what the victims had asked for. The point of that statement was not to re-ask him to resign. The point of that statement was to say the House Democratic Caucus is not open to a bipartisan investigation of this within the legislature, which is the only arm in Virginia that can investigate because the crimes did not occur in Virginia. So the Virginia State Police cannot investigate. The FBI, there's no federal jurisdiction. They cannot investigate. And so the only mechanism for Virginia to investigate these kind of allegations would be a legislative hearing. Now, you could call that hearing an impeachment hearing. That's the appropriate mechanism to do it. You could also do a hearing that was not an impeachment hearing. But either way, the legislature needs to have a fact-finding hearing that would then lead to whether or not to have an impeachment hearing. And in order to do that, you need to allow these two victims to come forward and testify, which they have said repeatedly that they wish to do. And what the House Democratic Caucus is doing is trying to silence them. They're trying to put them into a position where they're talking to DAs in other states where the process is completely confidential, where the people of Virginia will never get to see what their stories are, get to hear directly from these women. They're trying to silence these women is what they're doing. And it's disgusting. It is absolutely disgusting. They have been very clear what they have asked for, and we need to do what they asked for, not what Eileen Filler-Corn thinks is best politically. Now, to the special election last night, I don't think that what Eileen Filler-Corn wants to do politically is exactly a big winner on any electoral level. You can obviously see in the special election results last night, the Democratic candidate badly underperformed. Now, it's hard to tell and differentiate with 3 statewide scandals going on, the complete ineptitude of the House Democratic Caucus, and a Democratic candidate who had his own individual sort of scandals going on within that district. He had made some statements about the Israel-Palestine conflict that were pretty nasty that he had to apologize for. It's hard to tell which of those things is what led to that underperformance, right? And so, it's hard to put down your finger on specific analysis there. That having been said, the Republican candidate in that district was basically a non-factor, didn't have much of a campaign, didn't do much. And so the results do have some bearing on what we'll see in November in that you had 2 deeply flawed candidates. And so no one was vastly overperforming their vote. And what did we see in those results? Well, as you said, John, when you centralize it to 2015, you see major losses if this was to be matched in November. And, of course, these are scenarios. I'm not predicting this, but this is a scenario. Major losses for the House Democrats coming. in the November election, while the Senate would actually pick up a seat. And for some of your listeners, they may think that doesn't make any sense at all. Why? And let me explain. The 2015 election was the last time the Senate was on the ballot,
right? And
that was pre-Donald Trump. And obviously, we all know the world changed when Donald Trump was elected president,
right?
Politically in many, many different ways. The 2017 election was the first election post-Donald Trump, and that was when the House of Delegates was on the ballot. Mm-hmm. So the results that were, obviously, we've seen a huge influx to the Democratic vote since Trump became president in 2017 and 2018 in the midterm elections. So the results last night essentially were something in between. You could still see a Trump effect because we weren't back to 2015 levels. It was actually still better for the Democrats than 2015, but it was dramatically back from 2017 and 2018 in terms of the results. And so that's why you're seeing that the Democrats would have a slight pickup from 2015, the pre-Trump era, based on the results last night, and actually take control of the state Senate, while the House of Delegates, which was the first post-Trump election, would have many of those gains rolled back if the results matched last night.
Look, I think your analysis, Ben, was spot on because, as you said, that that special election last night underperformed between 15 and 17 points, and you took 16 and 17 for that, and they underperformed, and then you just extrapolated that out to all the other districts and said depending on where redistricting is, the Republicans would gain 11, 12, or 13 seats. I thought that was pretty astute and pretty accurate. Now, you had also said early on, just so our listeners know, when we're with Ben Tribbett, very senior, very noted Democratic political strategist in Virginia and probably one of the top 3 to 5 in the country for Democrats. And Ben, you had said a couple months ago when the leadership fight was going on for minority leader of the House caucus Democrats that it was a very weak field, and you really didn't see anybody there that could lead their way out of a paper bag. I really think Eileen Fillercorn, I don't think she's cut out for this. She's a really nice lady and great to go have a cup of Java with and talk about her family and as sweet as can be. But I don't think she bargained for this. I'm not sure she's capable of leading her caucus through this crisis. What say you?
Well, John, I'm going to say, it's been a disaster. And I think the reason it's a disaster is the choice that she's made, which is obvious to anyone who's watching, that Eileen has decided that she is just a filter for others and not going to show leadership on her own. Mm-hmm. And so what I see happening is that she's talking to members of the caucus and trying to create consensus and leading around that consensus. Mm-hmm. And that's not leadership. Mm-hmm. If Speaker Cox used that style of leadership in the Republican caucus, mm-hmm. we wouldn't have Medicaid expansion mm-hmm. because a majority of the Republican caucus never supported it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to get out and actually lead ahead of your party and have people follow you. Mm-hmm. And that's where Eileen has been a complete and abject failure so far, mm-hmm. is that she has been completely unwilling to show any leadership and have people follow her. She just wants to be the person who polls the caucus and takes the caucus position. And in a time like this, I don't think you could have a worse leadership style than what she's choosing to do. And so, I don't want to make it personal. I don't want to say that she's a terrible leader in terms of her leadership abilities or whatever. I'm just going to say that the way that she's chosen to do it has made her a terrible leader in this situation.
Look, I'm just the observer looking at this, and you kind of predicted this kind of thing was going to happen when she took over, and I think you're right. When you go to leadership, you can also go back to Speaker Bill Howell in 2013, who got the biggest tax increase through in Virginia's history to build roads, which we're seeing now all over the place along the Golden Corridor. He didn't have a majority in his caucus either, and had Hal not fought for that and led on it, we would not have the Interstate 64 and 95 improvements that we have that have made a dramatic impact on people's quality of life from Virginia Beach to Washington. So you're right about that. Let's get to Patrick Hope, a rising star in the Democrat Party. Patrick Hope, normally a very sober-thinking, cautious legislator, right? Not a bomb thrower. You would agree with that, right? Just not his style. I've had him on my show. He's, measured, but he's not a bomb thrower. 2 weeks ago, he comes out and says, look, Monday I'm filing impeachment proceedings. We're going to go forward with this investigation. Then rumor has it that the House Democratic Caucus went crazy on him and got him to back off on that. Now, looking back in 2 weeks, maybe he should have done that. What went down there? What was Patrick's thinking then? What is it now? What happened?
John, I would sort of refer back to the public reporting on this, and I think it was widely reported that he had the caucus jump down his throat on that conference call that they had, and I agree with you. I think it's certainly looking more and more like Patrick was right and the caucus was wrong, but I think that what you saw in yesterday's House caucus statement was why that they had Patrick delay. The caucus leadership does not want to investigate this. The caucus leadership wants to tell these women that have faced so much adversity and are so brave coming forward right now that their requests cannot be met. And I think that's horrific. Again, I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. I think it's absolutely horrific. These women have said what they wish to happen. The legislature should try to meet those wishes of the victims in this case, and allow them a hearing to testify, and allow the people in Virginia to watch them, to listen to them, to hear their witnesses, and to size up their credibility. And then I believe that the lieutenant governor should be given the same opportunity at the same hearing to do the same, to bring forward any witnesses he has, to publicly testify about the situation and his point of view. And I think that people should be left from there to be able to make their own judgments. But that would give the legislature enough information from that fact-finding to be able to determine whether or not they want to pursue impeachment hearings. And I'm sick and tired of listening to Democrats say all of this, identity politics of, well, it looks bad if this happens in this order after what happened with Ralph. No. It looks bad if we equate idiotic high school and college behavior, which would be the Northam and Herring situations, and what they did was bad. But if we're going to equate their stupid behavior in being in insensitive pictures with a crime, the party completely lost its way. If you can't differentiate, doing something wrong, and those pictures are very wrong, but doing something wrong is not a crime. And if we can't differentiate that, then shame on us. Shame on everybody, because it's an absolute disgrace that we've struggled to differentiate that. So, my view on it is that the House caucus position is to undermine these women. They're the only the fact that the Republican caucus is willing to move forward, and that the House Democratic caucus is now the one roadblock to these women having the hearing they've asked for, is appalling. It's disgusting. It completely undermines the Democratic message. It exposes us as really complete frauds in terms of what we've told the public that we stand for in believing women. It is a debacle, and I just think that everybody should be very embarrassed at the whole entire spectacle.
Ben Tribbett, I want to thank you. I can tell you're upset by this, and I'm a longstanding friend of yours, so I can feel your emotion on it, Ben. I know you well, and I hear you. All right. I want to thank you for coming on. I'm out of time, but I really feel what you're going through, and I want to thank you for sharing that with us. Final question: should Fairfax resign now or wait?
Of course, he should resign, and if he doesn't, he should be impeached.
Ben, that's going to be the final word. Thanks for being with us. At Not
John.
Larry Sabato, we're going to put Ben's comments up later this afternoon, and Ben, very troubled